would like to invite Tim Schafer and Lee Petty to the stage, please.
Hello.
Hi, everybody.
I feel like we're about to sing a song together.
You don't bring me flowers.
Sit down. So, did people know that we were going to come up here?
Nope. We didn't know until
We didn't know that we were going to come up here and talk to you. So, we apologize for this. No, what am I saying? This is totally prepared. If we're going to it's going to be amazing.
It's sort of a metaphor for game development. Totally unplanned. Could be great or a disaster.
Could go on for 4 years.
That's right. Might lose funding halfway through.
Thanks for having us here at Konsoll in Bergen. Everyone's been super nice to us. It's so nice to hear all the excitement and enthusiasm about indie games. And as someone who used to work at LucasArts, it's so nice to see so many people who knew Jory and someone that we knew. And it's like finding just finding a whole community that he knew that I didn't know he knew. He got around. Like I got around.
Jory was international.
He was international, exactly. So hopefully we can talk about some stuff before all the big entertainment starts. How much time do we have? Do we know? How much time do we have? Okay.
20 minutes.
All right.
Well, it's you're very old.
True.
Like a respected elder.
It's true.
And I thought people might want to hear about how you got into the industry and some of the early LucasArts stuff because. Usually when you've had too much to drink, I hear about some of those stories, and they're really fascinating. And then, so I thought maybe we'd talk about that if you guys want to hear about that a bit. Is that something you'd like to hear about? Yeah? And then also, I think, Double Fine's been around 16 years, and when you founded Double Fine as an indie studio, that word didn't really exist at that time, so I thought maybe you could talk about why you chose to leave LucasArts and why you wanted to be one of the OG indies. Yeah? So, yeah.
Sure. I picked. Someone asking a question. I think someone's already starting with the Q&A. Yeah. When I was a kid, I had an Atari 400 computer, and I'd program in BASIC, and I really loved making games on that machine. And so when I went to college, I didn't know what major to pick, and so I picked computer science because I was like, well, that'll be easy because I already know how to program, and then it turned out to be really hard. But I really had no plan for what to do with my life. I had no idea. I was really kind of scared, and I thought I really wanted to be a writer. And then I was getting near the end of college, and I was like, I guess I'll get a job as a database programmer because that's all the programming. I didn't have much imagination. It's kind of like everyone's talking about database programming. I guess I'll do that. Because
I'm glad that didn't work out.
I tried really hard. Luckily I failed at that. I really admired Kurt Vonnegut, and Kurt Vonnegut was one of my favorite authors, and he had a job at, I believe, General Electric. He was an engineer, and then he wrote short stories at night. And I was like, that's what I'll do. I'll get this. And so I went on job interviews for database jobs, and I interviewed at a place. I had 2 interviews at a place where they did databases for police and fire departments. And one of the things I would write would be the system that tracked how tall the weeds were in different vacant lots. So that was my career. I was headed straight for the weed abatement database programming job. And then I happened on the job listing at the Career Center at my college at UC Berkeley had a job for programmers who could write. And people were interested in both. I was like, that sounds really awesome. And it happened to be what was then called Lucasfilm Games. And I had loved Lucasfilm Games because they had made some of the best games for the Atari 800, like Cronus Rift and Rescue on Fractalus and all these early fractal dynamic landscape generating games that were Eidolon, and they were awesome. And then my favorite one, I won't mention the name because it's important to the story. And then so I applied, and I got a call from David Fox, and we started talking about my qualifications and if I had played many of their games, and I talked about all those games I liked. My favorite was called Ball Blaster. Ball Blaster.
Yeah.
And Dave's like, Ball Blaster, huh? Well, and I was like, yeah, I love that game. He goes, well, it was called Ball Blazer. But it was called Ball Blaster if you were playing the cracked pirated version. I was like, yes, I guess I didn't get this job. And then I hadn't played a lot of their new ones. He's like, have you played any of that? That was 8 years ago. Have you played any of their new games? And I was like, oh, like what? He's like, these things we make called graphic adventures. Zach McCracken, that was his game. I was like, no. And so.
But is this before or after you submitted your resume?
This was before.
Okay.
So I had pirated their games. I had not played the recent games. I was a big text adventure fan. I played a lot of Zork and Infocom games. I love Scott Adams' original text adventures. But I hadn't played Zach McCracken. I'd been in college, and I was really busy, and that didn't. Basically the phone interview, I bombed completely. Just disastrous. And I'd also been turned down by this point. I had applied at Atari. I applied at Hewlett Packard. I applied at all these jobs because I was rejected everywhere. And and so he said, well, just go ahead and send in your stuff and put in a cover letter, describe your ideal job. And so I made this thing, on the Atari 800 it had this thing called a koala pad. It was like a little tiny Wacom tablet, like this big, and a little stylus, and it drew pictures.
Yeah, I always dreamed of having one of those.
Yeah.
I had to draw with, it was a keyboard.
brick.
There was no mouse at that point.
We had to type in the XY coordinates. Yeah. And so I drew a kind of graphic adventure resume of like, someone on the quest for an ideal job hunt. Is like you enter this environment and it was like the story of trying to get the ideal job told as a text adventure with pictures. I mean, I didn't even get the medium right because they didn't have text and then pictures like that exactly. But anyway, and I sent that in, and then I went to the computer store and I bought a copy of Zach McCracken. And I didn't have much money, so I bought it and I went to the interview so I could talk about it, and then I returned it afterwards.
Excellent. You probably just copied the disc, right? It sounded like...
Yeah. I wasn't even that smart kind of hacker programmer. I would get the secondhand pirated stuff from a friend of mine, so it's not even... I can't even say I was cool and I hacked it myself. But anyway, and then I really felt like I really just skated by, and just somehow the resume had a bunch of pictures on it. It was silly enough to get their attention, and I went for an interview up at Scott Walker Ranch. It was amazing. And then I got the job, and it wasn't until I'd been working there for like a year, I was like, I still thought like, well, I'll be working in games for a while, but I really end up being a writer. And then I was like, wait a second, I'm getting paid to write. And it took me a long time to realize that I was doing the career that I had thought I was going to be doing. Like, I'm getting paid to write. I guess I am getting paid to write. That's crazy. And the end thing of that is just, I guess, I had no idea how my career was going to go, and it ended up going in a completely different way than, despite all my best efforts to push it into weed abatement database writing, it just went a whole different way. So it was a combination of luck of seeing that job listing, but also everything. It looks like, in retrospect, everything I was doing was pushing that direction. As far as the games I was playing, it was more about instead of being my thoughts about what career and the planning I was about my career, it was the games that I was playing that led me into my job. And so I always thought, they always talk about following your bliss, or those follow what you love and stuff. But everything about that turned out to be true. Just by spending time with the things that I loved, I ended up having an accidental career in games.
Yeah, I remember, if you guys haven't seen it, Tim, I think a few years ago, posted what that resume was on our website. Your application of LucasArts. It's like graphic adventure resume, and it's really awesome. And
especially the art.
The art is great. Not really. But, I mean, it just shows that I think it's still true more than ever, just like finding a way to stand out in some possible way, just, being, maybe foolish or brave enough just to try and do something crazy like that.
Well, the secret there, and the secret that has come up a lot in our careers, is that at that point I just felt like I had nothing to lose.
Yeah.
And so I just kind of was like, let's do it. And there's so many points in the Double Fine's history where it's just like, we got nothing to lose. Let's just go for it. And it led to doing something maybe a little more bold than if I felt like I was trying to protect something we already had.
Yeah. Because back then, like you said, there weren't so many jobs, and it was a kind of a new industry. And then getting to work at LucasArts must have been amazing. I mean, how did your experience go from getting in the door and that realization you're being paid to write, and then without too many years going by, you started leading projects, right? You co-led one with Dave Grossman, right? Which was Day of the Tentacle.
Yeah, we started off, first working for Ron Gilbert on Monkey Island. Secret of Monkey Island was the first game we worked on. And he was running things there, and it was it was a really unusual time because LucasArts had a lot of money. It was sitting on a big pile of Star Wars money, and and it wasn't allowed to use Star Wars as a license because either Kenner or Parker Brothers or one of the big game companies had the Star Wars game license.
Kenner made all the action figures.
Okay, so then it was Parker Brothers because they did the 26. That was a game cartridge going into it. They made the Hoth battle game. Anyway, the rights were gone. We couldn't use the Star Wars, so we're like, I guess we have to make up some stuff. So like, it's really rare to be sitting on a bunch of money and have to make up new stuff. Like, it's a really an amazing opportunity to be able to create IP in this world. Like usually, if you want to do your own thing, it takes you a lot of your own. Like it's just really hard, and no one's going to pay you to do it. People want to pay you to work with their IP. Like, would you do some work for hire for us? So it was this kind of weird backwards bubble in the entropy of the games industry where we were allowed to make up stuff and be funded to do it. So that's where all those games like Monkey Island, Day of the Tentacle, and Full Throttle and Grim Fandango came out of this weird place where we had to make our own IP up. And then eventually they got the rights back to make Star Wars games, and they started making Star Wars games, and they were like, oh, these make a lot more money. And then that ended that little bubble, but it was a really amazing opportunity.
What was it like in terms of, I've worked at larger companies before Double Fine where if you have an idea and you're trying to pitch the idea internally and get them to agree to let you run this project what was that process like at LucasArts? Was there a lot of management and hierarchy to get, something like Full Throttle approved?
It was a little like, have you ever seen The Sopranos?
Yes.
No, Goodfellas. A little bit like Goodfellas.
Goodfellas, okay.
It's a little bit like, there was less violence. But there was it was a little bit, I think a better way to put that would be like they were apprentices and they were, I don't want to say masters. There were these people like Ron Gilbert. Sith Lords, like Hal Barwood, and people who ran projects there, and then all of us, I guess, like professors and grad students. So we were kind of like the grad students. So we were on Ron's team, and other people were on Hal's team, and we would, kind of learn their particular way of making games. And then Ron was kind of like, I think these two people are ready to lead their own project, and it was kind of like being made. To bring it back to the mafia, it's kind of like being made men. But it was that mentorship. Lucky enough to have a good but grumpy mentor in Ron, and then to have
I
him
understand that one.
And he advocated for us up to upper management. He was like, I vouch for these two. I think they could do a good job. And that's where another place we got really lucky was having a mentor like that who would both train you but also stand up for you when it was your time. And they took a risk on us. And that's one of the things I learned at LucasArts is so often people talk about their idea for a game. I have a great idea for a game, and so much of the bets that a company makes are not on ideas at all, but they're on people. They'll be like, I believe in that person, their idea. I don't even understand their idea, but they'll figure it out because I believe in that person, and that's who they make bets on. Yeah. So, like when Double Fine said, you should make a game, Lee. Exactly.
So you're sort of like Ron Gilbert.
Grumpy. I get grumpier every day.
When they started making more Star Wars titles, obviously that's less interesting to you. You got to make all these original IPs as you were coming up in the game industry. At what point did you decide that wasn't the place for you and you wanted to try forming your own company?
Well, I was there for about 10 years, basically the entire 90s, and Grim Fandango was over, and a couple of things happened. One of them was I heard this rumor that someone else was making a sequel to Full Throttle at the company. And I was like, that can't be happening. No one's talked to me about it. And it turned out to be true. This other little group had started a sequel and no one had talked to me about it. I was like, I made that up. That's my thing. And I realized, no, I guess it's not my thing because, George Lucas paid for it. He owns it. And that was the deal. And so I was like, I want to own my own thing. I don't want to have someone else be able to make a sequel without talking to me first. And then we also got the opportunity. MTV was doing a lot of cartoons at that time. Like they did a lot of like the Max and
Aeon Flux.
Aeon Flux, yeah. And they were like, we want to do a Full Throttle cartoon. And I was like, yeah, let's do it. And but then the management at LucasArts was like, nah, we don't want to do that because it's time consuming and an unexploited IP is more valuable than an exploited one at that time. So I was like, what are you talking about? What do you do? MTV. And so I was like, okay, I want to both own my own things and then also be able to like do interesting things with them when those kind of opportunities come up. And then also, a lot of the people from that era. That era just kind of felt like it had changed. A lot of people that I knew had left, and it felt like it was time. And a lot of people had left to start their own companies. And this gets back into that feeling. First, getting into the games industry, I thought, wow, I don't know who makes video games, but they must be way smarter than me. And then, and a lot of them are. Most of them are way smarter than me, but not
especially
everybody.
Back then, yeah.
Yeah, especially back then. Not everybody. And then the same thing happened to me when I was thinking, I'd never thought I could start my own company. I can't start my own company. You got to figure out where to get printer paper, you know, like who's going to clean the bathrooms. There are all these things that like I don't have to think about working at LucasArts. I don't have to think about these things, and I don't want to ever think about who cleans the bathroom. And much smarter people than me are the people who start companies. And
Much smarter people than you figure out who can clean the bathroom.
Yeah.
There's a lot of logic in that.
And then a few other my friends left Lucas and started their own company. I was like, okay, they might be a little smarter than me, but they're not much smarter than me. Like if they can do it, I probably could do it. And so I left and started my own company. And then all those other companies went out of business. I was like, oh my God, this is scarier than I realized. But that gets back to a little bit why we do the documentary at Double Fine, the Two-Player Productions documentary called Double Fine Adventure for the game that we crowdfunded. And all the documentary footage that we take, we're trying to kind of pull back that curtain so people can see what game development is like. And that's because of that feeling I had when I was a kid when I had no idea who was making games, and are they robots or scientists or robot scientists or something? And so I want to show that. So that documentary, that stuff is up on our YouTube channel. It's free. If you ever want to watch me like talking like this for like hours and hours and hours, you can do that. But it has other things too. But it shows, but you people are all working in games, so you know that stuff. So I started my own company to get back to your question, and now here we are. Long story short, yada, 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 here we are.
So when you founded Double Fine, you didn't have investors, right? This was just...
No, it was just me in my apartment in a bathrobe and flip-flops and like a game idea, calling up people. A lot of the things that allowed us to get started were the fact that I was ignorant of all the hardships to come, so that helped a lot. But I had a certain amount of practice with running projects, and just kind of the expectation being there that if you have a great idea, people will come with money, because that's the way it had worked at LucasArts for 10 years. And so I just like, okay, let's do that again. And I made some calls, and and it turned out to be, it's still kind of true if you have if you have an idea that you really believe in. And a lot of it is about your own personal enthusiasm. One of the things I learned at that time is that it's not about going out and being boastful or being arrogant about stuff, but people tend to trust your own opinion of yourself. Like if you project that like, oh, my game is crap and you don't like it, like people will be like, oh, I guess he knows what he's talking about. I guess his game's not very good. But if you really believe in the idea that you have and you really love your game, if you let that come out and you talk about it, your enthusiasm is contagious. And people are like, wow, he's really excited about this game. This game must be really kind of good. And I feel like that I was really excited. It was Psychonauts was the idea that we had. And it's like, I love this. I want to go into people's brains. I want to make a whole game about it. And talking about it, you just become animated and become excited. And people are like, oh my God, I have all my money. And so that's what I learned there, that enthusiasm is contagious. And people will trust you about your own evaluation of your own game idea.
It seems like that's the running theme in your career, is just not knowing that it's actually harder than it is. Just sort of just moved ahead. You're like, what do you have to lose? Why not try? And
yeah. That's true.
There's a lot of worrying. Like, I mean, it's as I'm sure a lot of you know, it's hard to make a game. It's hard to get a group of people to work together, and then if you're trying to get money to make a game, it's kind of depressing and super intimidating. But you've always had this very Double Fine, working at Double Fine now. I've worked there for 9 years. Tim always has this very infectious kind of positive attitude about things, like it'll work out, and it makes people feel more comfortable. You're like, well, he's running the company and he's smart and creative. Like, it's gonna be fine, right? And you're like, yeah, it's fine. And then talk to him later, and he's like, yeah, we were almost out of business. Like,
but we're going to move into our space, and it wasn't ready yet. And I was like, you guys, we're getting kicked out of our old office space, and the new place wasn't ready for us to move in. He goes, well, we think the truck's coming tomorrow, and it will move stuff. And he didn't say everything will be fine. He said, what I've learned is that things always work out. They don't always work out the way you planned, but they always work out. And I was like, oh, you hippie. But I feel like I've internalized that. Like things do always work out, not exactly like you plan, but they do always work out, and you move on.
Well, we're still around after 16 years.
Yeah.
That's amazing. We've had some, for a while, every time we ran a large project, right, so Psychonauts and Brutal Legend, both of those projects, I'm sure it's public knowledge, both those projects were canceled halfway through
I
production.
recommend that. Always get your project canceled to really, really get people's attention and get the team focused.
Yeah, but that's, you have a big team, those are big teams, and we're halfway through production, and we're like, so we're not being paid anymore. And then we weren't even sure, like in Brutal Legend got canceled. It got canceled sort of indirectly, right? It's like, well, they just stopped paying us and didn't talk to us. Stop calling us.
Yeah. Stop sending us money. That's the important thing.
Yeah. But in that situation, that was another one that I think a lot of people could have felt a lot of panic about. And you're like, well, we're just going to take this shit on the road and get someone else to give us money.
Yeah.
And it was like, and it actually strangely worked out. And in some ways, it is actually beneficial to have your project canceled and switch publishers, because when you go to that second publisher, they can see
like,
more.
Wow, you got your shit together.
Yeah, and you've made so much of the game already.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Part of it is just, why do we do this? Why do we make games? And if you've gone into the games industry I'm going to get rich, like it's probably, I don't know if it's going to work out for you. I just wanted to make games because there's this game, because I wanted to make games. There's like this game I want to make, and whatever it takes, we're going to figure out how to get this game made. And so when we had any sort of hardship, including having our funding cut, it was like, well, this doesn't change the plan. We're still going to get this game made. And that was the only idea I had. If I was more imaginative, I might have figured out a way to bail out and get out of there, but I just had this one idea, which is make this game. And we never wanted to give up on that. Have we talked for a long time now? Or have we talked
Are we out of
long?
time?
It was quick. Oh, yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, is there anything you want to say, Lee? I want to introduce Lee Petty. He's our... Lee is amazing. Not just good at asking questions.
Well, if there's one question left, we should talk about the future. Right?
The future.
The future. So in the recent years, we've done all sorts of things. We went from big games, a lot of small games. You were always leading the games, and a bunch of other miscreants like myself led some games. Mm-hmm. We kickstarted some stuff. Mm-hmm. We're making Psychonauts 2 now, which we don't usually make sequels. So I don't know. What is your hope for Double Fine and the games industry in the next couple of years?
We've gone from my history being at a big publisher at LucasArts. I had that model in my head of spending multiple millions of dollars and having a big team, and I basically had to kind of gradually unlearn that at Double Fine, like. Meeting other indies, like when I first met Nathan Vella from Capybara Cappy Games, and I was like, wait a second, you make money off this, and you spend your own money on the games, and you make them really cheaply. That's interesting. That's it. You don't spend millions and millions and millions of dollars. That's crazy. And learning how to make smaller projects like that and be more independent has been kind of backwards from the history of most people, but it's allowed us to stay alive and be nimble. And so now, with the grace of our community, like the people who've supported us all these years and then showed up when we started crowdfunding games, we were able to go back to our roots and make another Psychonauts game, which we're really excited about. So we're doing more Psychonauts games and more games, hopefully from Mr. Petty, and remastering a lot of the old adventure games from the 90s at LucasArts. We're doing that,
And we're kind of, sort of, a publisher, which is kind of a dirty word, right?
Yeah. It depends. We're not a dirty publisher. We are doing Double Fine Presents and publishing games from other people and helping them with their exposure, like games like Thoth and David O'Reilly's Everything and
Gang Beasts.
Gang Beasts and Nog is coming out soon. And so it's just great to be involved now in any community that has been really helpful to us, and we can now help put on shows. Like we're putting on independent games festival in San Francisco called Day of the Devs, which is coming up soon, where we have like 60 games, third year in a row. Fourth? Really?
All right.
Yeah, time flies. Greg Rice, everybody.
Yeah.
And
Hey, Greg. See, that's why Greg knows who cleans the toilets.
So after lunch, everyone should come see Lee's workshop, which is sold out. So if you're not already going, don't. But it's gonna be amazing. And then tomorrow I'm talking with Lynn. Yeah. Oh, yeah, that's right. Right. Yeah. And Greg is gonna go have a drink with Greg. And So before they kick us off, I just want to say thank you again, everybody, for having us here. This is nice to be here. This is the land of my people. My great-great-grandparents were married in a church here in Bergen. So yes. So if anyone else there is named Larson, there's some Larsons in my family. We should have a little family reunion out in the lobby. Are you all named Larson? Is that what it is? Okay. Thank you.
There you go.
So thanks everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.